gentlemen, and distinguished panelists. Welcome to the webinar. It is the Global and Regional Studies Center, IoBM. This part of our regular webinars that we are having every month. This is our seventh webinar and the first one in 2021. And obviously it is on the most topical subject of the US, the foreign policy of the US under President Joe Biden. As we have seen, the inauguration, a tumultuous and unprecedented inauguration in which the outgoing president was not there. The election results were contested. The sacrosanct, so-called the citadel of democracy, Capitol Hill, was stormed by the supporters of Mr. Trump. In fact, not only that it reflected the divisions and polarization within the US, but it badly eroded the soft power of the US and its global leadership as a leader for democracy and so-called free world. And there is, in fact, I was reading in one of the papers that unity by itself is bringing unity by itself is the most divisive question now at this time in the US. Likewise, Trump also had maverick and his own way of doing international relations when he embarked upon America First. He was dismissive of multilateralism. He was dismissive of any other input from even his own in his own institutional feedback and he repudiated nuclear deal with Iran. He abdicated the NAFTA obligations. He waged embarked on a trade war with China, which was almost and initiating a new Cold War and almost going very near to the hot war in South China Sea. So it has been a very, very unprecedented time of disturbance and disruption for America at the international level as well as domestically. And Mr. Joe Biden, in fact, takes over at very, very difficult time domestically and internationally. While he has said it that his domestic agenda will top his priorities when he said that I'll build back better. Obviously, fighting the coronavirus is because more than 400,000 Americans have died. In fact, the highest number in terms of deaths in the world due to coronavirus. And of course, the economy, the battered economy, will take his major priority. But obviously, the international relations cannot wait the settling of all the dust back home. So I think today's we should see that how the events could unfold, whether Trump's legacy would endure domestically and internationally, or there is a elbow room for Joe Biden to really move and set a new domestic as well as international agenda. So welcome Ambassador Najmuddin Sheikh Saab and Ambassador Javid Hussain. I'll just give a little brief introduction of our very, very eminent panelist. Ambassador Najmuddin Sheikh has been is a foreign service officer who has been Pakistan's ambassador to US, Canada, Iran, and Germany. He also held the post of prestigious post of foreign secretary. He has been President's special envoy for Central Asia. He writes extensively on foreign relations and has an international standing as a diplomat and a scholar. And of course, I also have the privilege to welcome our ambassador Javid Hussain, who has been very kind despite the fact that he was on his holidays, but he's found times. I'm so grateful to you, sir. He's a distinguished career diplomat, and he has held assignments in major capitals: Paris, Washington, New York, Beijing, South Korea, and Iran. He's the author of several papers, and he just finished a book. The book is called Pakistan and a World in Disorder, a Grand Strategy for the 21st Century. He has been visiting scholar at the South Asian Institute, University of Texas. Welcome you both, my seniors, sir. And May I request Mr. Najmuddin Sheikh to give us a little bit of sense of what has happened to America and what is likely to happen internally and externally? Maybe you can 5, 6 minutes give us a little roundup, sir, and then followed by Mr. Javed Hussain after you're finished, sir. Over to
Right.
you.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Rasool. It's been this is going to be a good discussion, and I I think you were right in saying that the domestic scene in the United States of America in the post-Trump period, what is it going to be like? Because frankly, in the new administration, I see the priority being to fix things domestically even while working simultaneously on foreign policy, but giving primacy to the domestic scene. Now, in the domestic scene, people disagree. People talk to me about the fact that, look, there are 75 million people who voted for Trump. Uh, is that figure going to continue in this fashion? Is the Republican Party going to be totally committed to Trump as it has been in the past? My own feeling is, and this may prove to be wrong, but my own feeling is that the divisions within the Republican Party have been engendered by the events of January 6th. And those have caused the Republican Party leaders, including, and that is very important, Mitch McConnell himself, the Senate Majority Leader, or former Majority Leader, now he's no longer Majority Leader, but Mitch McConnell, Liz Cheney, these are people who are walking away from the policies that Trump advocated and which, uh, in a sense, reflected the fact that it wasn't the Republican Party, it was the Trump Party. Now, again, I make this very, uh, very tentatively that I think the number, that 75 million voter number, has shrunk. It has shrunk, in my view, dramatically. Perhaps now, and many will not will disagree with me, that now you can think of a hardcore of about 20 million or 25 million at best, and the rest have now rethought what it means to try and preserve democracy in the United States of America. Now, whether this has gone across the world as something that is likely to happen is another matter, because the world sees the Trump era as representing, in a sense, what the United States of America and its democracy was moving towards. That Trump was a phenomena, but he was also reflective of the trend towards populism and rightist elements that had become part of the era. You know, one of the things that I recall, and I did a recent program in which this came out, that when Reagan, I was chargé d'affaires in Washington when President Reagan was inaugurated, and I attended all the inaugural functions. I went back to look at what he started his speech with, and he said, "The phenomena that you should that America is proud of, and which wins it acclaim around the world, is the fact that every 4 years we have this peaceful transfer of power. This is a mark of American democracy, and this is what distinguishes us. This is what makes for American exceptionalism." Well, we saw what that exceptionalism was on 6th January in America. So, how far has that division gone, and how far can Biden's call for unity really uh, become effective? My feeling is that it is likely to be effective because, in one way, the American people are much more mature than they are given credit for. And if they are not given credit, it's understandable. Today, there is suspicion in Europe, there is suspicion in the ASEAN countries, there is suspicion elsewhere that this is not a temporary phenomena. This is where the United States was moving towards. So Biden has a hard task trying to keep this out of the picture. But he also has a problem of the what are called the progressives in America. Bernie Sanders, as an example, Bernie Sanders has now made it clear that he hopes that under the Biden administration, they're going towards move towards expanding Obamacare so that it is universally applicable, that there will be an increase in salaries, there will be a new minimum wage, and perhaps equally importantly, that there will have to be taxation, and that taxation has to be leveled on the. He mentioned a figure which I thought was quite remarkable, that 600 millionaires have made uh, billions, not billions, trillions in the course of this COVID-19 epidemic. And they have been making money while Americans remain unemployed, while Americans are struggling to pay their mortgages, or now that they've stopped the foreclosures, but even so, that they all the troubles that have been visited upon them. And he has advocated a heavy tax. Now, he is not alone. This progressive section of the American Democratic Party is strong. I talk about the squad, the uh, AOZ, and the new girls who have been elected and who have made it a point to stress that a more progressive a more progressive policy, a more progressive approach to domestic events has to take place, and that we will be in the forefront of moving towards this. Now, Biden has chosen, as in terms of what was electorally possible, to remain a centrist. But I think that he is finding that the pressure from the progressives is strong, and that there must be more done in order to meet this particular pressure. So I anticipate that he will have a domestic agenda which includes new taxation proposals, new minimum wage proposals. He has already proposed, he has already asked his people to look at the fact that the minimum wage should be $15 an hour, and to see what else can be done with regard to Obamacare, etc. These are part of the executive orders that he has issued, but these are reflective of where he wants to go. Has this restored faith in the United States and its system across the board? I am not sure that it has. I don't want to go beyond the time that you prescribed, that we do a 5-minute
Go ahead.
interview.
Go ahead. Yeah.
But I think that this should set the stage for recognizing that his first priority is going to be domestic. Simultaneously, he will go to this, but and he will go to this to foreign policy in the light of the fact that he has to consult with Congress. He has made that vow that on issues he will consult with Congress. Blinken, as the foreign secretary, as the Secretary of State designate, has already said that we will consult closely with Congress. And for us, it is particularly important because that will include consultation on Afghanistan, on which the policies that the Congress has advocated and the restrictions that it has laid down in the Defense Authorization Bill are going to be of fundamental importance in determining how the thing plays out in Afghanistan. I'll stop there and
Right.
allow Ambassador
Yeah.
Javid to make
Yes,
the
sir.
same.
I will come back to you with questions, particularly with regard to U.S. world leadership in background of its erosion and lack of faith now. What has happened, or the space that is available. But in the meantime, may I request now Ambassador Javed to please enlighten us with your understanding of the situation, what has happened in U.S. Sir,
Thank you very
over to you.
much, Ambassador Rasool. I think Ambassador Najmuddin Sheikh has very an excellent way portrayed and summarized the latest political developments on the political scene in the U.S. After the recent elections. Biden obviously is faced with a very huge and gigantic task of overcoming the this pandemic, COVID-19, as well as initiating the process of economic recovery and growth. So these are the, I think, on the domestic side, these will be the tasks which will be taking a lot of his time. I would like to go over the whole ground that Ambassador Najmuddin Sheikh has already covered, and I think I would go further now towards the foreign policy side as to what kind of what will be the shape of American foreign policy under the Biden administration. I would like to divide my presentation, this intro, into three parts. Number one, what will be the elements of continuation or continuity in the Biden administration's foreign policy? Where will it diverge or depart from what Trump was trying to do? And third, how it will affect Pakistan's relationship with the United States. I think as far as the elements of continuity are concerned, there are 4 or 5 which I would like to mention. One is the continued Sino-US rivalry. In my judgment, the defining feature of the 21st century is the growing rivalry between US and China. And China's dramatic rise over the past 4 decades has already catapulted it to a predominant position economically on the international scene. As China rises, it will demand the accommodation of its interests in the global political, security, and economic architecture with worldwide repercussions. The US, for obvious reasons, is going to oppose this process. It will try to confront this challenge in various ways by building up alliances, by continuing its policy of containment of China, and other steps that it might take in the Indo-Pacific region, especially in the South China Sea, etc., etc. One of those steps would be strengthening America's or US strategic partnership or cooperation with India, which then obviously has direct implications for Pakistan's security and economic well-being. So, continued US-China rivalry leading to growing US-India strategic cooperation. And the third is that for the same reason, I think I've gone off the...
No, it's fine. Go ahead, sir. Go ahead.
I can't see anybody.
Yeah.
Oh.
No, you're there. Yeah, you are there. We can see you. Yeah. We can hear you. Go ahead, sir. Go ahead.
Okay.
We can. Go ahead.
Okay.
So,
I can't see anybody, but maybe I have to Zoom or something.
No. I can hear you. You are all right. We can hear you. That's fine. You can't hear us? Can you hear us? No.
I can hear you, but yes, now I can see. I think there is some problem here.
Okay.
Yeah. Can you see me now?
Yeah.
You're visible and you're audible. Please
go
So ahead.
The third element of continuation will be strengthening of US alliances with Japan, South Korea, Australia, and besides India. Fourth element that I would like to mention is that although there might be slight variation in approach, but US would basically adhere to the agreement signed between US and the Taliban in February last year, which aimed at US military withdrawal, in commencement of intra-Afghan dialogue, and assurances that the Taliban would end their links with the terrorist groups in Afghanistan so that there is no terrorist activity emanating or originating from Afghanistan. I think basically they will adhere to that agreement, but as a statement issued by the Biden White House National Security Advisor's Office is that they would like to review whether Taliban have been fulfilling their commitments laid down in that agreement to reduce violence in Afghanistan and their links with the terrorists, and also to hold meaningful negotiations with the Afghan government, whether they have been fulfilling these commitments or not. And so they have told, I think, the Afghan National Security Advisor in a conversation between the NSA of America, Jake Sullivan, and Hamdullah, I think, Muhib, who is the National Security Advisor of Afghanistan, that they would review to what extent Taliban have fulfilled their commitments before deciding their further future course of
We'll
action.
come on Afghanistan. In fact, we'll come on Afghanistan and we'll discuss it in
Yes,
detail.
yes. I'm not going to detail. I'm just saying what are the elements.
Yeah, yes, sir. We understood
Yeah.
it now. Overall,
The next thing would be that America would also continue to focus, as in the previous administration, on issues of terrorism and nuclear proliferation. I think these are the 5 or 6 elements of continuity. But then there will be some divergences. The Biden administration will be more focused on or interested in playing an active role in multilateral institutions, like going back or rejoining the Paris Climate Award, going back or rather seizing the process for the withdrawal from World Health Organization, disarmament, and also I think on the we might take it more tougher line on relations with Russia because of these allegations of Russian meddling in the electoral process in America, and also of the charges of cyber hacking. So these are the issues where there will be some change from the policies which were pursued by the Trump administration, and also and the policies which will be pursued by the Biden administration. Another major point of departure would be the joint comprehensive plan of action, or the Iran nuclear deal, where I think the signs or indications are that America will rejoin that thing, maybe with some kind of further assurances from Iran regarding its nuclear program, missile program, and also some kind of assurances about its policies in the Middle East, which are a source of concern to countries like Saudi Arabia, UAE, and some other regional countries. So I would not like to, and of course, promotion of human rights and democratic values would be another element where the policy of Biden administration will differ from the policy pursued by its predecessor. What does it imply for Pakistan? I think.
so we'll come on that. It will come in a while. In a
Okay. Very well.
I will now request Ms. Najmuddin Sheikh Saab, because sir, whether it is domestic agenda or it is the international role that US has been playing in the past, in the post-Second World War, in the Cold War and beyond, and at one time the only superpower in the world. But the way the ground slipped out of US as a global leader has been unbelievable in the past 4 years. So much, almost he tried to make it irreversible for America to again be the world leader in a way, because of repudiation of multilateralism, completely waging wars, alienating allies. He did not believe in it. To contrary to that, while we see new US administration and its, in fact, Secretary of State said it, that what we have to do is to build alliances. So may I request Ambassador Najmuddin Sheikh Saab to let us know that is it really possible for America to again reclaim the global leadership in political terms and in economic terms? Whether how much space is available, and will they really pursue this goal, or they will be happy to be, or they will resign to the co-jointly leading the world with China, which seems to be writing on the wall first according to some analysis. So, sir, may I have your views on that? Najmuddin Saab, and I'll come back to you with the same question, Ambassador Javid Saab. Sir.
Well, let me start by talking about the fact that traditionally the midterm elections usually result in a loss of seats for the people in power. So that today Biden can be certain about the fact that he has a majority, albeit slim, in the House, and he has a majority by virtue of the tie and by virtue of the role that Kamala Harris can now play as the presiding officer in the Senate. Uh, this is not likely to prevail after 2022. Now, this again means that for people abroad, how much faith can we place in Biden's claim that I'm looking to for unity, I'm looking for expanding the ties that we have, of building new ties or strengthening old ties? I think Europe is a little suspicious of the fact that they can move in this direction. Second, will it be more responsive to European concerns? And I'm focusing a little bit on the US-Europe relationship because that is going to be a fundamental issue in terms of relations with Russia, for instance. Now, the Germans have made it clear, Angela Merkel has made it clear that Nord Stream is going to go forward and they are not going to stop it. Now, this to the Americans is a red rag because if Nord Stream goes ahead, then Europe is going to become more dependent on supplies, on fossil fuel supplies from Russia. And this in turn will affect the manner in which they proceed. Second, when they look at the agreement that China has reached, and in which China has made a substantial concession in terms of human rights by saying that they'll observe the Convention on Human Rights in terms of the concerns that have been expressed about Xinjiang and about the Uyghurs and the degree of freedom they enjoy. Uh, this is still remains a question mark. And I think that more and more the Europeans are looking at the fact that we must be able to pursue an independent foreign policy. We need the United States. We want that particular alliance, but we will have to see how we can maintain a relative independence given the fact that the position of the United States may change. Second, that Biden, and this is the point that I think may be more interesting, that Biden is really, President Biden is an Atlanticist. His focus in the past has always been on Russia as the principal adversary and on controlling or trying to contain Russia is really what he wants to do. Now, the defense budget passed is $756 billion dollars, easily more than the next 10 countries in the world and the expenditure that they incur. Now, this is, to my mind, a show of the fact that the American administration cannot shake off the strength of the arms lobby, because
Okay.
the arms lobby governs a lot of the things that happen in foreign policy. The fact that such a large budget has been advocated, despite the fact, and I think this is also something that we should note, that Russia's total budget, declared budget, is $69 billion. If you double that, and that is permitted, if you double it and say that there are lots of expenditures that Russia incurs which do not form part of the budget, and let us say that it is $120 billion. The Europeans spend $500 billion a year on defense. Now you can talk about the fact that this is spent in the wrong way, and you have to correct the manner in which this expenditure is incurred. But the fact remains that in terms of the amount of money available and the nuclear deterrence available, because frankly, in Europe, just as in other parts of the world, and I'll come to that later, uh, deterrences can be provided by the fact that French force the frappe or the UK's nuclear deterrence provided by their submarines, the Trident missiles, are sufficient to, in my mind, to be deterrence. Because if there is nuclear exchange, the fact that you drop only 2 bombs on Moscow and Leningrad, for instance, is sufficient to act as a deterrent, and therefore this expenditure could very well be avoided. But right now, it seems that the military-industrial complex that Eisenhower had talked about continues to exist and continues to influence the manner in which policies are made. This applies to America, but also applies to Europe, and now has begun to apply to Japan, to South Korea, and to other allies. Therefore, we must recognize that arms, weapons, and the lobby that exists for enhancing defense expenditure continues to exist and will continue to be very influential in policy. I mean, uh, we have all heard about lobbyists in America, but those lobbyists also exist in Europe and elsewhere, and they are designed to increase the exchange of arms. And in that context, it's also the export of arms. Therefore, the arms that Saudi Arabia purchases, or the F-35s that the UAE is seeking to purchase, and on which question marks have been raised, those question marks may result in the UAE being denied the F-35. But perhaps Israel will be persuaded, because again, uh, these are all interlinked questions, but because Israel is the fundamental partner in the Middle East for America, it is possible that they will be persuaded, they will persuade the United States that no matter what the agreement Trump reached with the UAE, the sale of F-35s to the UAE would be a fundamentally destabilizing element. Now, uh, just an aside again, in terms of the fact that I think this is going to be an important factor in the nature of the relationship with Israel and with the Palestinian people, because Biden has made it clear that he is still for a two-state solution. That while he will not change the location of the embassy or other matters, he will still push for a two-state solution and for a viable Palestinian state to come into existence and be the partner in the Middle East. Now, whether he'll succeed in doing this or not, the first steps that he has taken are encouraging, in terms of the fact that he has now restored the money that is to be paid to the Palestinian refugee camps, and for making it a policy that we will oppose any further settlements being created in the occupied areas. Again, will this policy continue? One doesn't know. One has to watch and see. But these are the initial indications of the direction which they want to take. Now, to come back to what the other questions that you raised, I think it's important for us to recognize that the trust and the belief that America is back and America will be the leader uh, remains questionable at this time. It remains questionable for the Europeans. It remains questionable for the ASEAN. Now, the ASEAN has committed itself to the regional cooperation comprehensive economic plan. And in that plan, it is China, which is the lead player. This is going to be built around, the RCEP is going to be built around China focus. Can this be changed? Right now, we see that China has adopted a policy of saying that we retain our 9 dash line. That remains our claim. But in the meanwhile, we will follow the policy of making agreements separately, continuing to discuss the code of conduct. But in the meanwhile, we'll exploit the resources of this area jointly with the countries there. Whether this falls within the 9 dash line or not, the Philippines and China are working on exploiting oil resources and gas resources. They're doing the same thing with Brunei. They're doing the same thing with even with Vietnam, where there are other questions involved. But this is being addressed in that particular fashion. So I think that some adroit diplomacy is at play right now. The Americans may want to push the fact that there is a tribunal decision on the fact that China's claims are void and are not acceptable. It is not acceptable that they built military installations on islands that they have created. But the countries of the region and the countries of the region are interested in economic development. And in that economic development, you talk about Quad, you talk about Australia, uh, Korea, Japan, and the United States. But no money is being put into free and open Indo-Pacific. What is being done is that, look, we will see what opportunities exist, and we will ask the American entrepreneur, the American private enterprise, to try and take advantage of this. This is not how it works. This is not how it works. They are not putting money where money is required, and therefore, and since the world is now focused on economic development and on economic collaboration. If the Americans are not at this time prepared, and I frankly think that even when US aid comes back into play, and he has appointed people who are anxious to do that, there will not be the resources available at this particular time for that to happen. Now, we should also look at the other side, that now China is also pulling back on investment into the BRI and into the over onto One Belt, One Road, or into the BRI. On both, they're pulling back. And I think that now perhaps you will see that the Asian Infrastructure Bank and the Bank of China and other banks will be drawing back on the amount. The last figure I saw in a publication that is, I think, sponsored by China, there will be about $4 billion, as against the vast amounts that have been put in. There will be about a $4 billion investment this year in the expansion of the BRI and OBR. So there is right now there is a situation where China is still the lead economic partner, that America is pleading for the countries of the region to provide facilities so that private enterprise, American private enterprise, can come in. Private American enterprise seems to feel that the best returns continue to be from China. And therefore, the investments in China are growing. Uh, they are growing in their bond market. They are growing in their capital markets. They are growing again in terms of investment, capital investment in creating new channels of investment possible. Now, Biden has said that he is not going to reverse some of the measures that have been taken about declaring some Chinese companies as being owned by the military or having military contacts, or the bans that he's put on Huawei, etc. And these are not going to be reversed immediately. But as Biden moves ahead, and as Biden moves ahead with climate change as one of his principal requirements, he needs China's cooperation. And China will be willing to extend that cooperation. The date that they've set for themselves of 2060, two dates, 2035 and 2060. These are both important in terms of what they will do in terms of expanding their collaboration with the rest of the world, and for what they will do with regard to climate change and the reduction, making themselves carbon neutral. Now, 2060 has been trumpeted as the date. I, I don't know how far they will advance along this path, but so far the Chinese have tended to make to honor the commitments that they have made. So there is this particular facet that is to be looked at. And more importantly, that I think President Biden, he's quoted as having called President Xi Jinping as a thug. But the fact is that he had a very good relationship with him, President Xi Jinping, and he met often when he was vice president, and uh, President Xi Jinping was at that time the number two man in the Politburo, and was visiting.
Can you keep the comments on China, US? थोड़ा सा हमें इस पे we'll be requiring your more insight. Can I go back to Ambassador Javed? Same question. I'll rephrase it for you, sir. There seem to be three pillars of US leadership. That is the economic primacy, the military preponderance, and a democratic or a soft power. Do you think these three pillars or these three triangle, some of it has crumbled or is not able to really carry the flag of US leadership of the world? It has to go up China. Do you think our assumption is right, or there is a contrary view that you hold? Sir, I'll come back to you on China and US, especially with regard to their trade and then environment. And Ambassador Najmuddin, after this question. So may I have, sir, your views on that, Ambassador Javed?
Yeah, I think on the economic side, it is quite clear that America is gradually losing ground to China because of China's dramatic rise and dramatic economic growth over the past 4 decades. And there are signs that although the rate of growth will not be as high as in the past, but still it will be far higher than the American growth rate. So most, according to purchasing power parity terms, China overtook American GDP in 2014. And in terms of nominal dollar value, Chinese GDP is expected to overtake or surpass American GDP around the year 2028. So after that, Chinese economy will be the biggest economy in the world, let's say by the year 2030, although the per capita income will be almost 1/4 of what American GDP per capita is. As far as the military side is concerned, Ambassador Najmuddin Sheikh just mentioned the military budgets. About $750 billion is the current American military budget, and China's is about $180 billion. But if you project this trend, the trend of rapid growth in China's military budget, the estimate is that by the year 2035, China's military budget or defense expenditure will exceed that of America. So if these trends continue, my own projection or estimate is that by somewhere between the year 2040 and 50, if these trends continue, China will emerge as the most powerful economic and military power in the world, overtaking America on a nation-to-nation basis. But America has other strengths that China does not yet have. One is its chain of alliances, worldwide chain of alliances. It has allies in Europe, and despite some divergence, which was aggravated by the Trump administration, I think fundamentally there is still a realization on both sides of the Atlantic that this alliance must be maintained, continued, and if necessary, it should be strengthened. So this is a source of great strength to America, because if you combine the GDP of America with that of its partners in NATO, then it is almost, it doubles. It becomes about 50% or more than 50% of the world GDP. And China will take much longer time to reach that stage, if at all. And the third thing is that America's, the fourth thing I would mention is American soft power, to which you referred also, which gives it great advantage over China in terms of world leadership, its democratic institutions, its its advancement in science and technology, its universities, its cultural achievements. These are things which make it attractive uh, for the other countries of the world, for other peoples of the world. So if you take into account all these factors, I think in the foreseeable future, and when I say foreseeable future, I think up to the year 2040 or around there, America will remain, uh, will be able to retain its leadership role in the world, although it will continue to lose ground gradually to China. As far as China is concerned, there are many ifs and buts, because the fact that it has grown very rapidly over the past 4 decades is not a guarantee that it will continue to grow in the same manner in the years to come, in the decades to come. It will depend, a lot will depend upon the maintenance of internal political stability, and also its ability to, once you reach the medium level growth, economic growth, the further economic growth after that stage becomes more difficult, and it is more difficult than to maintain high growth rates after you become a medium developed country. So because of all these reasons, I think in the foreseeable future, America will remain the most powerful country in the world. It will be able to retain its leadership role. But if these trends continue, which we have been witnessing in the recent past, and they continue for, let's say, over the next 30, 40 years, then after that, I think China inevitably will become the most powerful country in the world. So uh, if a country has to plan its policies, we have to see that you cannot ignore America for the time being. And as far as Pakistan is concerned, I think while we have very important strategic compulsions to deepen and strengthen our strategic cooperation with China, we also have important interests engaged in America. We have we have extensive trade. I think about the current level of our exports to America is about $2.6 billion, and we have expectations of investment from America. Then we want to benefit from American advancement in science and technology. All these things, and of course, the fact that English is a spoken language, and uh, somehow makes us feel closer to America than to China. That is a reality. And that is why we have such a large diaspora in America, in terms of students and immigrants of Pakistani origin. So America should not be, I think, although it is gradually losing ground, but I think we should not write it off in our foreign policy calculations in the near future, and even in the foreseeable future.
Thank you. Ambassador Najmuddin, sir, may I just rephrase a little bit this question that I was that was on China-US relations. If you recall, there were press reports that the memo was leaked about what is called Indo-Pacific strategy of Trump. It was very mysterious leak, which was seen to be, some of the analysts, they say it was willful. And this menu, if अगर आपकी नजर से गुजरा है, you might have seen it. There were three elements they said. One was to keep US primacy, economic primacy in the region, deny China what they saw, deny China a dominance of navigation, our economic prominence there, and continue to be partners with India. So, sir, this what is now, I think it started in, I think, Obama, and then culminated into the pivot to Asia policy, where they changed from Asia-Pacific to Indo-Pacific. So how do you place US-India relations and the rivalry of Pakistan, of China, US, since we have implications for that? How do you, sir, see that?
Well, you're dating it to a later period than I do. I think that for me, the Kargil was the starting point for building the US Indo-US relationship. It was during Clinton's time the manner in which the Kargil episode was handled by the Americans and their constant consultation with India, with Vajpayee being on the line and being kept briefed on a minute-to-minute basis. I think if you read the Bruce Riedel account of that particular period, it'll become obvious that that created a new aura of trust between India and the United States, which hitherto had felt that in South Asia, Pakistan was the key uh, ally of the United States. And that, of course, dated to the fact that Pakistan was once talked about as the most allied of America's allies. And that prevailed in the Indian mind until 1999. Now, let me take it further and say that even at that time, uh, US thinkers, US intellectuals, US commentators were talking about the fact that, and this is the role that every superpower, every power, major power, thinks of in terms of the region, that in this particular region, a rising China needed to be counteracted, and India was the obvious client for choice for this particular purpose. So I dated back to 99, but even if you take your dates and you talk about the Civil Nuclear Agreement 2005 and take it on from there, the whole purpose was a that India should have be comparable capabilities in the nuclear field with those that China has developed, and that China should India should be regarded as the bulwark or as the counterweight to China. So that is where it is built from, and that will continue. Let us be quite clear in Pakistan that the relationship that the American administration will regard as fundamental in South Asia is the relationship with India, and that if this requires accepting that India will have a degree of hegemony in South Asia, so be it. If they talk to Sri Lanka, if they talk to, they are quite prepared for the fact that Sri Lankan relationship with the United States has to be determined in part by Sri Lanka's relationship with Tamil Nadu and by extension with India. So too with the Maldives, so too with the other countries of South Asia, including Nepal, including Bhutan, including the questions of Sikkim and of Tibet. So I think you will see that this particular facet is not going to change. Even today, I think there is a big question, and I don't know. And again, I emphasize that we have to be careful about how we have to pay attention to how the S-400 question is dealt with. In case of Turkey, they are talking about imposing sanctions. It's the same issue with India. Will they give them a waiver? Right now, it seems that they will not give them a waiver. And that is why Biden's being an Atlanticist and regarding Russia as a principal threat will make, I think, make sure that either this is abandoned or there are sanctions imposed on India for purchasing and deploying the S-400. Because if they deploy the S-400, then essentially the interoperability of the defense forces of United States and India is going to be affected. Now, how this is resolved, I do not know, because India seems quite certain that this will somehow a way out will be found by the American administration. My own feeling is that President Biden is not going to stay with that. That Biden is going to insist that just as we are going to sanction Turkey, we will sanction you if you install and deploy the S-400. In Turkey's case, it has meant removing Turkey from the F-35 program. In India's case, it may mean that the interoperability will come to an end. Now, with that is one facet. The other facet is what is going to be India's role in the free and open Indo-Pacific rather than the Asia-Pacific. And as I said before, uh, what is happening, in my view, is that Quad, which was meant to be the base for the fact that there is going to be larger collaboration between these four countries, it will be reduced to being only a military cooperation. That Quad will continue. And frankly, again, my own view that Australia will not be able to stay with this. Australia's raw material mineral bases that it exports to China are about 25% better paid if Australia exports to China than if it finds markets elsewhere. The Australians broke away from a sanctions regime against China once before, and they will, in my view, given their economic interests, probably do so again. There's only so much wine, so much Australian wine that the United States can buy. They can put it in their banquets, etc. But that does not change the fact that much of the material, products are products that are needed in China and that would be the most lucrative for Australian exports. And at more and more, I come to the conclusion that economic interests will have primacy and will trump, sorry, not in a different context, will trump any political interests or any so-called security interests. Now, one of the reasons why this is so is that I think also that China has been behind the Great Wall. China, as acquiring territory, has not been part of Chinese history. And I think that its neighbors may believe that while it will consider itself the Middle Kingdom, while it will consider itself the country around the country with which, to which certain obeisance has to be paid, they do not think of it as a danger to their territorial integrity. Now, if that is so, then perhaps they will find it easier. Look, China, in terms of bases, for instance, now, they talk about the fact that China established a base in Djibouti. China didn't establish a base in Djibouti. You guys said that you're taking advantage of us. Told the Americans, told the French and the others that you are saying that we carry out anti-piracy operations. Your ships, your trading is continues at comparative safety because we are providing security. Why don't you become part of it? So they set up Djibouti on that basis. Now, beyond Djibouti, have they got another base in mind? Not yet. On the other hand, the Russians have a base with Sudan, and they are going to expand that. But in China has not done that yet. China has created these islands in the South China Sea, and those are possibly things that can impinge on what the Americans call the freedom of navigation and what they think will be affected by the bases that they've created. But by and large, China is interested only in the fact that the three communiques should be respected in terms of Taiwan, and that Taiwan is, as you have conceded, as the three communiques have conceded, is part of is part of China. So I think that right now, what is said and what is the actuality, there is a gap between the two. But one of the things that, for instance, the ASEAN countries, uh, I don't think the ASEAN countries think that they will impinge. I'm not talking about the waters. I'm talking about land territory, that any of them feel that their land territory is under any kind of threat of this nature. Not Indonesia, not Malaysia, not Brunei, none of these countries. Again, this is my feeling. Whether this history of China in the past will continue to operate, or this will be believed by the countries next to China, is something that is open. Javed mentioned the fact that we have this sort of feeling of affinity with the Americans because we have a large
Right.
diaspora there. We have connections. Well, our Association of Pakistani Physicians of North America is really a very, very good body if we can use it properly for canvassing, etc. We can do a great deal, and we do need to improve this relationship and to expand it further. Now, why do we need this? Because America continues, as is obvious from the example of China itself, that there are investors in China, in America, and those investors can be persuaded to come to Pakistan, provided we are able to provide the right facilities. That is another question, but that is a question we have to look
Right.
at. That our own management has to be of a nature that invites foreign investment into Pakistan, and we have the potential to do a great deal. But for that, we need to improve our management, our administrative structures, etc. So to go back again to the principal question, I think suggest that our relationship with, and it is a relationship of great benefit to us with China, must necessarily impinge upon the relationship with the United States of America. At one time, the great thought was that American companies based in China would set up subsidiary plants in Pakistan. I think that continues to be the case.
Very so.
That in agriculture, again, this will happen. That some of the companies which are operating in China, which are creating new seeds, which are creating new hybrids, these will uh, move into Pakistan because
Right.
China wants Pakistan to be a source for many of the agriculture products that it needs.
Thank
That
you.
China's
Thank you.
need
Thank you,
for
sir.
agriculture is great, and we should move in that direction.
Thank you, sir. Ambassador Javed Saab, since you are now at the US, and there was a reference to Pakistani diaspora, but with the same thing, there have been reports in the papers. There is a huge number of Indian diaspora, I think about 20 of them, uh, I think in the White House only alone, and at some key positions. So how do you see that playing or not playing any role in keeping the momentum or the new relationship between India and the US? And how does it affect us? Can our diaspora do something, or our government can we suggest to them something to do to kind of offset if there is any disadvantage in talking to the Biden administration or their future direction towards South Asia? So over to you.
Well, I think at the strategic level, and if you look at the situation from a long-term point of view, the what is happening between US and India and indirectly between US and Pakistan is at the moment is not to our advantage. US has embarked upon a long-term policy. It has taken a strategic decision to develop its strategic partnership with India as a counter to China's expansion or expansion of Chinese power and influence in South Asia and the Indian Ocean region. You would recall that Condoleezza Rice, I think in the year 2005, made a famous statement that America will help build up India as a major world power of the 21st century. That policy continues, and Clinton administration, Bush administration, Obama administration, Trump administration, four administrations have followed that policy since 1995 or 1996 of building a close strategic partnership with India. Now, this creates strategic imbalance in South Asia. It poses a serious threat to Pakistan's security, and indirectly it pushes us closer to China. And therefore, our links, our cooperation and partnership, strategic links with China are of vital importance for preservation of our security and for even our economic vitality and economic growth and progress and prosperity. My own personal assessment is that despite the attraction that America offers to us, America is in no way it is not possible for America now to play the role in which it can be of great support to Pakistan's in terms of its security or in terms of its even economic growth. For that, we have to either primarily rely on our own efforts, which unfortunately we have not developed. We have become a client state as a matter of habit, as a matter of policy, instead of building up our own resources, looking at trying to develop a policy of self-reliance based on austerity, as Chinese have done, especially since 1980, and with leading to dramatic and economic growth. We have not done that. We are so much dependent on foreign assistance from various sources that we have stopped thinking of policies in a different framework, in a different policy framework. So under the present circumstances, other than China, China is going to remain for a long time to come our main bulwark, both in security terms and also in the economic field. And therefore, this China-Pakistan economic corridor, which is an offshoot or a dimension of BRI, Belt and Road Initiative, announced by President Xi Jinping initially in 2013 in Astana, if I remember correctly, in Kazakhstan, is of vital importance to us for both strategic reasons and also for economic reasons, because it involves about $60 to $62 billion of Chinese investment in Pakistan. And in the initial 4 or 5 years since this agreement was signed in 2015, by the year 2020, about $30 billion have either been, at least has been committed. And I think about $15 to $20 billion may have been already invested. This is a huge amount. Look at our IMF package. We go for the sake of about $5-6 billion to be given to us over 3 years. We are willing to accept conditionalities and restrictions and even accept IMF personnel and people from Washington to come and govern and dictate to us our economic policies. And here, $62 billion is coming within the period from 2015 to 2030 for investment in Pakistan from China. So this shows you in comparative terms what we are getting, from America and what is coming in actual reality from China. So economically, America is in no way it is possible for America now to give us the kind of assistance that we need. I think China is our main source of foreign investment. Secondly, in terms of security, because of the growing Indo-American, Indo-US strategic cooperation, I think the relationship that we had during the Cold War or in a few years, maybe after the end of the Cold War also, is a history. It has become history. We should not even think that kind of relationship will be restored. Even in 1990s, because I think if I remember correctly, in 1990, they terminated all economic and security assistance to Pakistan because we refused to roll back our nuclear program. And so I think we have to look ahead, and looking ahead, we should not plan that America, in whether it is Biden administration or any other administration, will be a source of great security support to Pakistan, or a secure source of investment maybe on a small scale, but not the kind of thing that China can do for you. I was just looking at the figures, latest economic figures. China has, it even in the last year, 2020, had a trade balance of about $360 billion worldwide. And compared with that, America had a trade deficit of about $800 billion, which means America had got last year alone $800 billion from the rest of the world to meet its own requirements. So if this process continues, America's ability to be of assistance to others will continue to decline. And China will build up its resources, its reserves, and it will be in a better position to expand its influence and power also into various regions. And BRI is going to remain, despite the adverse propaganda which has been carried on by America and some other Western countries for their own interests. And they are, from their point of view, that propaganda is legitimate. But we should not be taken in by that propaganda in Pakistan, because that is meant to counter and to contain China and to contain the expansion of Chinese power and influence in not only in South Asia, but also in the Indian Ocean region, in Eurasia, and in Africa and the Middle East. So from our point of view, I think America, despite the presence of very active and highly educated Pakistani community, will not be able to give us the kind of assistance either in the economic field or in the security field, which we need for accelerating our economic growth or for safeguarding our security. And you can see also there is another angle to which you referred. There is a very heavy presence of Americans of Indian origin in the Biden administration, both in the White House, in the State Department, and also in other executive. For instance, the head of the this Office of Budget and Management in the White House is an American of Indian origin. It's a very, very powerful office. It's like, as being almost like your finance minister, because she is going to control the budget of the federal government, US federal government. I mean, this is just one example. So that is further going to work to the detriment, to the disadvantage of Pakistan in future policy decisions by the Americans, by the United States, while they are dealing with matters in South Asia or in our part of the world. So I think we should not count on, the Biden administration or coming American administrations to become very supportive of meeting our security and economic needs. I would not count on that, and I would not, in fact, encourage our policymakers to count on that.
Thank you, sir. Sir, since we have only now about 18 minutes left, so I think we should discuss more. There are so many other topics that I had and some of you had suggested also, but I think we should discuss at least the proximity. So Ambassador Najmuddin Saab, can you, sir, give us some sense of US policies further in the Middle East, especially how the dynamics between US relation with Iran and its relations with Saudi Arabia will work out? Because Biden is on record on saying that unfortunately the crown prince, he kind of implicated him to the alleged murder of a Saudi journalist in Turkey. Do you think these will endure, or they were just personal comments and they will not impact the policy, the enduring policy of close relationship between the Saudi Arabia and the US? And the fact also that the Saudis have been so instrumental in bringing Israel and 4 of the Gulf states and Arab states together. Ambassador Najmuddin, sir, over to you.
Thank you, Ambassador Rasool. Look, first I'd like to talk a little bit more about Pakistan-US relations, and to ask that we focus a little bit on what General Austin said in the course of his confirmation hearings. Look, he pointed out that we continue to provide shelter to terrorist organizations. to organizations that are recognized as terrorists. Let us be candid and see that insofar as the Western world is concerned, and to a more muted version from China itself, that they are concerned about the fact that you have the LET, you have Lashkar-e-Tayyiba, you have Labak, and you have other organizations of this nature which find shelter with you and which are, frankly, to my mind, more importantly, from Pakistan's point of view, something that we must tackle and get rid of. On a more fundamental question, I think that if we don't tackle this, then we have a problem also with the FATF. And if we have a problem with the FATF, then lots of things are going to happen that are going to nullify whatever advances we've made in terms of generating a surplus in our not in our trade, but in the overall balance of payments because of the remittances. We know that the remittances that have been at 28 billion, and of which we are very proud, and we have good reason to be proud. But we know that these are going to decline, and this brings you closer to the question that you talked about in terms of Saudi Arabia and the proximate countries that we have. What is going to happen there? So let me just finish this point, that we have a very fundamental interest in trying to resolve the problem of the presence in Pakistan of organizations that are recognized by the United Nations, that are recognized by the Western world, and that are recognized in part also by China as posing a danger to them and to us. Now, with regard to the position of the Khashoggi, for instance, the Americans have made it clear that they're going to make public the report that was prepared with regard to which apparently assumes or assigns responsibility for Jamal Khashoggi's murder, if you want to call it that, as being something that was directed from Saudi Arabia by Prince and heir apparent Mohammed bin Salman. Now, how this will play out is something that we have to see, but we must know that this is going to happen. This is going to happen, and what is also going to happen is that all assistance that has been provided in the past for the Saudi campaign in Yemen is going to stop. Therefore, the relationship between Saudi Arabia and the United States is going to be strained. How strained it will become, perhaps we should not underestimate the ability of Prince Mohammed bin Salman and his colleagues to intensively lobby in the United States to offer to purchase more arms, and therefore to create a lobby that will effectively, if not neutralize, at least mitigate in some measure the current position that President Biden has apparently decided to take. Now, this means that the relationship between between Iran and the US, the JCPOA will come back. It will come back with conditions. Perhaps the Iranians have said that missiles are off the table, that we will not talk about missiles or our relations with our neighbors. We will talk about, but we will not talk about missiles or our missile development. This is off the table. This was off the table in 2016, and it will continue to remain off the table. How far there will be flexibility? The Iranians, as I've said, have had limited cards. They've played them very well. I think you can talk about Jawad Zarif, the most talented diplomat that this region has produced, for at least for this generation. And he is handling this as well as can be. But he is faced with the IRGC hardliners in Iran, and there may be changes there. But at the moment, President Rouhani and Jawad Zarif are committed to saying that we will reverse everything that we've done in the nuclear field, but we will keep missiles off the table. Sometimes, as soon as the JCPOA is restored, there will be discussions on what can be done. There will be undertakings. Some of them may be oral undertakings, maybe secret undertakings, but those undertakings will be made. So that is one facet. The second that I wanted to touch on, because we are almost close to the
We have like 2-3 minutes. And I go
and
to Bas Javid.
that is on Afghanistan. On Afghanistan, let us be clear that now the administration is probably going to end up keeping forces there. The total withdrawal by May is not going to take place, and Congress is going to insist that what they have said in the defense authorization bill, namely, what they have said is clearly that any reduction beyond 2000, below 2000, you will have to provide us complete explanation of why you're doing this, and will do so only when we grant you the authority to exercise that particular waiver. Therefore, I see the fact that there will be a retention, perhaps at 2,500, which is the level that they have now. That level will be maintained, and it will be maintained for some time to come. And any further reduction will be based on conditions, the conditional withdrawal, that the Taliban will have to prove that they have done their part. We will be caught in the middle. We have tried, but today, just yesterday, President Ghani said that if the Taliban want to be part of the negotiations and want to be of Afghanistan, then they must not, they must cease to be duplicates in Pakistan. That he has invited them to set up their thing in Kandahar, in Taliban-controlled territory. And I think that we may have to move in that direction. We may have to move in that direction because what the Taliban represent is not necessarily something that we would want to see in our own country. That it is the sort of situation in which we have to think very hard. We have to realize that whatever Prime Minister Imran Khan achieved during his visit to Kandahar has been vitiated, that President Ghani has talked about a trust deficit, and for better or for worse, it is President Ghani and his government which has to negotiate. The High Peace Council has to negotiate, and that position, in that position, they are going to want more cooperation of the nature that I've just talked about from Pakistan.
Thank you. Thank you. Ambassador Javed, can you also, like briefly, like 3 to 4 minutes, give something on the Middle East? What is likely to happen with Saudi, US and Iran, Saudi and Afghanistan, something like that. We have about 5 minutes, or 4 minutes.
Okay, well, as far as Iran is concerned, I tend to agree with Ambassador Najmuddin Sheikh that Biden administration will move towards the restoration or rejoining Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action or the Iran nuclear deal, but maybe with some safeguards from their point of view on the missile issues and also on about Iran's policies in the Middle East. This is something that needs to be negotiated, but I would like to caution here that Iran's presidential elections are drawing near, and it is entirely possible that this might take place after the new president has been elected and sworn in Iran. This is number one point. On Afghanistan, I think America will not withdraw the remaining 2,500 troops precipitately from Afghanistan. This is my feeling after reading, after listening or hearing this latest development in which Jake Sullivan, the American National Security Advisor, assured his Afghan counterpart that they would like to review this agreement signed with Taliban last year in February to see for themselves whether the Taliban have been fulfilling their part of the commitments that they had taken, ending their links with terrorist groups or and having meaningful negotiations with the Afghan government and also a substantial reduction in violence. So again, this is something that will be a subject of negotiations, and we will have to play our cards very carefully so that we do not get into a difficult situation. As far as the Middle East concerned, I think is concerned, America's major strategic goals, with which we may or may not agree with some of them, is number one is stop strengthening or safeguarding Israel's security. Second is to keep the supply lines of oil and gas through the Persian Gulf and Strait of Hormuz open to the rest of the world, and ensure security of Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, UAE, and other countries which are friendly with the and also to combat terrorism in the area. But they would like to maintain, I think, a balance between their desire to have this Iran nuclear deal in some form, maybe with some modification, and also at the same time to ensure that Iran does not pose a threat in any way to the security of their friends on the other side of the Persian Gulf. So I think these are the likely possible directions in which Biden administration will move. As far as the Palestinian issue is concerned, I think Trump has presented a Biden administration with a fait accompli. I don't think they will move the American embassy out of Jerusalem. As far as the Palestinian issue is concerned, I think my view is that the fact that four Arab countries recently signed those Abraham Accords with Israel, recognizing Israel without any progress on the Palestinian issue, shows that the Arab world has now, unfortunately, have been virtually, one would say, bludgeoned into submission on this issue, just because of the sheer force that America has at its command, and that force is fully available to Israel for the exercise of its hegemonic policies in the region, and also for riding roughshod on the Palestinian issue. So I think, as far as Palestinian issue is concerned, the two-state solution for all practical purposes, as far as I can see, unfortunately, is dead.
Thank you very much, sir, Ambassador Najmuddin Saab, Ambassador Javid Hussain. It has been an enlightening discussion webinar, which was so broad in its scope and so deep in its insight, because it comes from people of your understanding and insight. We are so grateful, and I hope that somebody in the government listens to our to eminent diplomats who have given amazing recommendations, and I'll try to summarize them and try to send them to wherever it is relevant in the press as well as to the government. Sir, but I really appreciate your input, appreciate your participation, and most of all, appreciate your precious time that you gave us. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. We will continue with our webinar series, and this webinar of our comes to an end. Allah Hafiz. Thank you very, very much. Thank you.